but I was looking for them. So I'm going to read this for us. The 8 March Principles for a Human Rights-Based Approach to Criminal Law, prescribing conduct associated with sex, reproduction, drug use, HIV, homelessness, and poverty. Interesting. It's issued by the International Commission of Jurists. This is published in March of 2023. The foreword. From long years in law, and as a proudly gay man, I know profoundly how criminal law signals which groups are deemed worthy of protection and which of condemnation and ostracism. Sorry about that. In this way, the criminal law performs an expressive function, and it has dramatic consequences on people's lives. It sometimes entails a harshly discriminatory impact on groups identified with disapproved or stigmatized conduct. To add to this, criminal prescriptions may reinforce structural inequalities. They may codify discrimination, invest them with the law's power, and may foster stigma. All this may wreak terrible harm. Criminal law may thus impel hostility, exclusion, inequality, discrimination, and marginalization of individuals and groups, sometimes to the point of violence. As a result, human rights, democratic values, and social inclusiveness all suffer. For a number of years now, the UN Secretary General, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, global and regional human rights mechanisms, bodies and experts, national courts, legislatures, and domestic human rights institutions, as well as civil society, have grappled with the problem of the harmful human rights impact of criminal laws that prescribe conduct associated with sex, reproduction, HIV, drug use, homelessness, and poverty. This led to a 5-year painstaking process. A group of jurists elaborated a set of principles that can constructively address these harms. The 8 March Principles for a Human Rights-Based Approach to Criminal Law, prescribing conduct associated with sex, reproduction, drug use, HIV, homelessness, and poverty. Published by the International Commission of Jurists, are a timely intervention addressing the detrimental human rights impact of criminal laws targeting vulnerable groups. The principles aim to be practically useful to the widest range of stakeholders. I can't stand the way they talk about stakeholders. From my own experiences in my life and in my work, I know they will be of immediate significance to critical audiences. Here I include judges who, in particular, bear the critical responsibility of guarding the rule of law while upholding human rights and non-discrimination guarantees. The principles are based on general principles of criminal law and international human rights law and standards. They seek to offer a clear, accessible, and workable legal framework, as well as practical legal guidance on applying the criminal law to conduct associated with sexual and reproductive health and rights, including termination of pregnancy, consensual sexual activities, including in contexts such as sex outside marriage, same-sex sexual relations, adolescent sexual activity, and sex work. Fascinatingly odd. I just don't think they should be touching base with that. But I see what they're doing. They're trying to include it all. Third item, gender identity and gender expression. HIV non-disclosure. Exposure or transmission. Wow. Drug use and the possession of drugs for personal use. And homelessness and poverty. Those are a wide range of conduct, anyhow. And I foresee that these principles may also be of practical use to others in the criminal justice system and beyond. Here I include prosecutors and legal practitioners, legislators, government officials, policymakers, national human rights institutions, oversight bodies, legal service providers, victims groups, civil society organizations, and academics. All these may play a critical role in mitigating the detrimental human rights impact of misapplied criminal laws. Says Edwin Cameron of the Retired Justice Constitutional Court of South Africa. The introduction. Criminal law is among the harshest of tools at the disposal of the state to event control over individuals. Actually, I would have to say it's family court. personally, because family court doesn't provide any protections for mothers, especially because it's only a mother that's being taken to court for her kid if it's not part of a divorce. So I disagree with that. But anyhow, those criminal protections should be extended in the other areas. But anyway, I'll continue reading the document and not interject my point of view. As such, it ought to be a measure of last resort, where other less restrictive means of achieving legitimate interests are insufficient. However, globally, states have exhibited a growing trend towards over-criminalization. While retribution, deterrence, incapacitation, and rehabilitation are generally considered to be its main purposes, criminal law may also perform an expressive function through public condemnation of certain conduct seen as deserving reprobation and punishment. The desire to harness this expressive function is a critical factor contributing to the proliferation of criminal law. The unjustified criminalization of individuals, and sometimes entire communities, is increasingly impeding progress in advancing human rights in many areas, including racial and gender equality, reproductive autonomy, disability, economic justice, civil liberties, sexual orientation, gender identity, education, youth development, and public health. Moreover, in recent years in some quarters, there has been a backlash against human rights, especially against sexual and reproductive health, and rights and the human rights of women, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, non-binary, gender diverse, and intersex persons, as well as against sex workers, people who use drugs, and people experiencing homelessness and or living in poverty. In particular, there has been continued use and, in some cases, a new proliferation of arbitrary criminal laws prescribing conduct associated with sex, reproduction, drug use, and the possession of drugs for personal use, HIV, homelessness, and poverty. These laws have led to egregious human rights violations, including by engendering and perpetuating stigma, harmful gender stereotypes, and discrimination based on grounds such as sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, and other protected fundamental characteristics. It's true. It's not appropriate, especially since they'd rather let criminals go free, and then they'd love to just persecute people they just don't like. Unless criminal laws prescribing the above-mentioned conduct are directed at coercion or force or otherwise at the absence of consent, their mere existence, let alone their threatened or actual enforcement, violates human rights. The use of criminal law in these domains contributes to a broad range of human rights violations, especially of the rights to freedom from discrimination, equality before the law, and equal protection of the law without discrimination, life, freedom from torture or other ill treatment, including gender-based violence against women, liberty and security of person, the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health, adequate standard of living, private and family life, freedom of opinion, expression, peaceful assembly and association, freedom of thought, conscience and religious belief, freedom of movement, rights to and at work, and participation in public affairs. And here's where I would like to throw something in. Again, family law has been steamrolling women for forever. Forever, you guys, and I'm just going to tell you the honest God truth. It shouldn't take a gay man and some transgender people to stand up and go, you know what, we want to have some rights for women to get recognized. And again, this isn't even tackling what happens in family courts. And you guys are going to understand that by providing rights to all of us means to all of us. And women are no longer going to be the slaves of mankind and the baby makers, and these need to be obedient wives. This is absolutely disgusting. And they're kidnapping children, they're destroying women, they're ruining love, and they're trying to make war fighters, and it's fired. Anyhow, let me carry on. The failure to uphold human rights and protect people against abuses, including violence, and the enforcement of discriminatory laws and practices, violates international human rights law. Such a failure has a far-reaching harmful impact on society, contributing to increased risks of ill health, including drug overdose, HIV infection, and unsafe abortions, and is social and economic exclusion. This harmful societal impact puts a strain on individuals, families, and communities. Therefore, there's an urgent need to address the proliferation of unjust, arbitrary, and unlawful criminal laws and the human rights violations to which such laws give rise. In recent years, the UN Secretary General, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and the Global Regional Human Rights Mechanisms, we already read something very similar to this. Bada, 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 said it all. Yeah, we got it. Generally, criminalization in the above-mentioned context, didn't we just read that? Okay, generally, criminalization in the above-mentioned context does not further the stated goals of the criminal law. Okay, for example, it does not protect third parties physically, psychologically, or financially from direct harm. Instead, it typically seeks to clamp down on consensual conduct, stigmatized identities, and personal status. The existence and enforcement of criminal laws prescribing the above-mentioned conduct punish, stigmatize, and deny services and rights to individuals, particularly those hailing from already marginalized communities, facing exclusion and subjugation solely for exercising their human rights guaranteed under international human rights law. Time and again, criminal law provisions enshrining discriminatory prescriptions may be rooted in, embody, and codify unequal power relations that in turn are often the legacy of colonial, xenophobic, racist, sexist, classist, ableist, cultural, religious, social, political, economic, and other power dynamics. Moreover, substantive and procedural criminal law may, whether or not by design, effectively incorporate elements of discrimination embedded in perceived gender roles and patriarchal, heteronormative power relations between men and women, and in other historical distinctions founded upon prohibited discrimination grounds. Ultimately, criminalization in law and application is the product of political decisions made in the service of existing relations of power that often detrimentally affect persons belonging to already marginalized or disadvantaged groups. That's exactly correct. Even when criminalization gives rise to and exacerbates structural inequality and discrimination, it may nonetheless escape legal challenge and redress because of states' failures to identify, collect data on, and review the effects of criminal law across prohibited grounds of discrimination. And we're going to fix that. We're going to make sure that we get the right data, and we're going to get the consensus for the people. That's what I've got to say about it. Carrying on. In light of the above, the principles below are intended to offer a clear, accessible, and operational legal framework and practical legal guidance based on general principles of criminal law and international human rights law and standards on the application of the criminal law to conduct associated with sexual and reproductive health and rights, including abortion, consensual sexual activities, including in such contexts as sex outside marriage, same-sex sexual relations, I'm not going to say the next one, and sex work, gender identity and gender expression, HIV, I'm not going to say that one either, drug use and the possession of drugs for personal use, and homelessness and poverty, and I'm allowed to do that. The principles are additionally intended to address the detrimental impact of the criminalization of this conduct on health, equality, and other human rights. I really wish they'd stop repeating themselves. These principles may also assist in considering more broadly the question of which other conduct should not be criminalized, or whether the content and scope of a given criminal law provision are consistent with general principles of criminal law and international human rights law and standards. Are we talking about like people being in jail for smoking pot? Because I agree, you should let them out. In particular, General Parts 1 and 2 may assist in considering the compliance of other criminal offenses, including overbroad criminal provisions used to target conduct addressed in these principles, with general principles of criminal law and international human rights law and standards, such as, for example, those prescribing apostasy, blasphemy, truancy, defamation, libel, propaganda, public nuisance, loitering, vagrancy, immorality, public indecency, same-sex marriage, the promotion of homosexuality, obscenity, and sexual speech. Certain kinds of pornography, non-exploitative surrogacy, certain harmful practices. Like, come on, you can't be vague like that in a document like this, dear. Migration-related infractions, the provision of humanitarian assistance, I guess it's true. They don't want people like feeding people and stuff like that. It's true. Acts of solidarity and certain types of civil disobedience. I mean, I'm okay with most of it being considered because decency is decency is decency is decency, right? Lies are lies are lies are lies. You're not allowed to like libel, slander, libel. You're not allowed to lie about anybody. You're not allowed to harm anybody. But as far as the public nuisance thing, yeah, people take things out of control and they can just claim anything about anybody. And I think that that's wrong. I think that there should be, now that we've got evidence-based capabilities with, like, you know, the ability to record things and stuff, I don't think that people should just be able to give their word. Honestly, there needs to be much more usage of our evidence-based options that we have. So anyhow, let's carry on. The principles may also be helpful in determining whether other penalties under other legal instruments are in compliance with international human rights law and general principles of criminal law. These include penalties enshrined in subsidiary legislation, an example, regulations, rules, guidelines, disciplinary laws, civil laws, bylaws, administrative laws, and regulations, zoning, curbing, and mental health commitment laws, among others. These laws and regulations, while not necessarily characterized as criminal under domestic law, have an analogous punitive character or stigmatizing intent or effect, given the severity of the penalty or other adverse impacts that the person concerned risks incurring. The nature, duration, or manner of execution of certain sanctions, such as fines, asset forfeiture, civil commitment of people with disabilities, mandated drug or other medical treatment, deportation and administrative removals, removal of parental authority, may also be evidence of their punitive quasi-criminal character. Absolutely. The principles aim to be useful to the widest range of concerned stakeholders. And I can't stand the word stakeholders because we're talking about people of the world. Are we not talking to the people of the world? Why are we talking to stakeholders? Who the hell is a stakeholder? Has anybody ever met Mr. Stakeholder? I haven't, and I don't plan on it. We're going to fire the corporations. We're going to fire the stakeholders. We're going to fire these money market boards of directors. And let's go back to a planet of people. People? Unless you guys will be some freaking stock certificate. And I don't think you want to be that. And we're going to get the consensus, where our vote actually gets taken into consideration, where we actually get asked what our opinions are, what we're dealing with, what we're facing, what we want to see. We actually get that because we've got the technology to do it now. So why wouldn't we? No more discussing the vote and bring your identification card or not. Okay, whoa, people. Let's get regular here. Let's do things with the technology that we've got and stop acting like dum-dums. Anyhow, carrying on. Yada yada stakeholders, however, they should be of immediate relevance to certain critical audiences. These comprise. This is very redundant. All I can say is this document makes me want to throw up. It's just over exhaustive, but it's understandable. It's trying to hit it home. Legislators at all levels who are responsible for the drafting, adoption, review, and reform of laws. Administration officials with delegated legislative powers, including powers to adopt secondary legislation, binding rules, regulations, and policies. Judges, including magistrates, presiding over criminal cases. Just criminal cases? Ooh, I caught you. You want to include everybody, baby, but you forgot about the mamas. Family court. Family court should be for divorces. You guys chose to get married, and I don't think they should be allowing people to get divorced, by the way, so easily. I don't think they should be just allowing somebody to get married again. These people are breaking a vow. Don't you think that the vows should, if we want to be a people of truth, that you shouldn't be able to just get married and get divorced like that. And you shouldn't just be able to screw up a child's life. Okay, I got opinions. We're going to make sure that this whole thing's get fixed. But I got you. You forgot to mention the family court, which is a very violent place. Okay, just thought I'd let you know. Nothing against you. I noticed you were a gentleman who may identify as whoever, but the point I'm making is don't forget the family court. It's full of corruption. Okay, prosecutors and legal practitioners. See, it says involved in criminal cases, not just criminals. Judicial benches in higher courts, such as constitutional and supreme courts, seized of cases considering the lawfulness of certain criminal law provisions and administrative penal provisions where pertinent. Another thing that we need to raise the question of is, they're trying to make this they're trying to turn this into a democracy when it's a republic that has a federal government. You get rid of the federal government, now you got a democracy where the states run their own situation, where they can take advantage of their own people, and the people find themselves in a state with a political party running them that they didn't even choose. They never had an idea that the political party would become so engrossed in where they live that it could actually affect their lives, and they got to move. So let's keep things in perspective. Not to let the states get all this power. That's the only way that we're going to keep our Constitution together is when the states have to do similar things, and not just be tyrants of their own state. Okay, so these principles may also be of practical use to other actors. Actors is not a good use of words. Who are we? Are we dealing with stakeholders or are we actors? I mean, stakeholders and actors, or are we people? Okay, sir, who wrote this? Come on now. I can clearly see you're trying to appeal to somebody's interest, but I got to tell you, go for the gusto. Say it like it needs to be. Otherwise, you lose. You just lost. You just lost everything for me by referring to us in these ways. Anyhow, other actors in the criminal justice system, including, we shouldn't let them be actors, by the way, heads of prosecution services or similar authorities responsible for establishing policies and guidelines or issuing instructions to prosecutors and other law enforcement officials, policymakers, executive officials, national human rights institutions, oversight bodies, legal service providers, victims groups, civil society organizations, and academics. Where's the United Nations? Why haven't you mentioned them? Yeah. So the United Nations is supposed to keep the peace in this world, and there really is no peace. So I think you should mention the United Nations. Aren't they the ones that manage international? Okay, I'm just saying, this is my critique. Let it be. Further, criminal law intersects with the application of other bodies of law, such as immigration law, administrative law, family law, and various regulatory frameworks in ways that you forgot the family law, in ways that may render these principles of interest beyond those concerned solely with criminal law. Right. The principles may also be of importance to human rights defenders more broadly engaged in human rights advocacy. Just for one. In 2018, the joint UN program on HIV/AIDS, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and the International Commission of Jurists, inspired by recent international initiatives, such as the 2017 Joint UN Statement on Ending Discrimination in Healthcare Settings, convened an expert meeting to discuss the role of jurists in addressing the harmful human rights impact of criminal laws prescribing sexual and reproductive health and rights, consensual sexual activity, gender identity, gender expression, HIV non-disclosure, exposure and transmission, drug use and the possession of drugs for personal use. The convening endorsed the call by civil society and other stakeholders for the elaboration of a set of jurists' principles aimed at assisting legislators, the courts, administrative and prosecutorial authorities, and advocates to address the detrimental human rights impact of criminalization in the above-mentioned areas. Subsequently, civil society and other stakeholders identified the need for such set of principles to also address the criminalization of conduct associated with homelessness and poverty. And I pray to God that your document is going to get into this, my friend. I certainly hope that what we're going to get to is tackling the underlying issues as to why society has marginalized these people in the first place. There's an underlying pattern. It's a pattern of hate. Okay? It's hate and it's foul information. They're abusing the genetic information to try to present their agenda. I hope you get to it. Okay? Following this expert meeting, the International Commission of Jurists produced successive drafts of the principles and circulated them to a wide range of expert jurists, academics, legal practitioners, human rights defenders, and various civil society organizations working in diverse legal traditions for their review. Between 2020 and 2022, a series of in-person and online consultations took place until the final version of the principles was finalized and circulated for endorsement in early 2023. Yeah, we're going to make this a world where everybody gets to participate, because we've got the technology and there's no reason for anyway. General Part 1 and General Part 2 below reflect the criteria that must be met under general principles of criminal law and international human rights law, respectively, to prescribe certain conduct in a non-discriminatory way respecting the rule of law. But this isn't through the United Nations, right? So this isn't a treaty, right? So you're not getting anybody's signature, are you? Okay, I'm just saying. It sounds like you're trying to be all bossy and stuff. Like, who are you guys? The jurists? Is that something new? I'm just saying. This is my critique. Anyhow, the preamble. Acknowledging that both substantive criminal law, namely the law that defines what conduct is criminal and determines the permissible punishment for the prescribed conduct, and its enforcement through criminal procedure laws, practices, and policies, including those related to policing, investigations, arrests, deprivation of liberty, detention conditions, and trial and sentencing procedures may violate human rights. And let me add, because criminal law, actually, these people that are like the prosecutors, what's up with that? What's up with the district attorneys being the only ones that can prosecute criminal law? I could have swore that I was able to go to the police and go, I want to bring charges on so-and-so, and I'm allowed to do that. I guess what? Now I'm supposed to have to actually make a what is it, a private like arrest? I have to do one of those. Is that what I have to do? Because they don't just do anything. They don't investigate anything anymore at all. And somebody told me in the court system that criminal law is pretty much only going to prosecute people that are being seen as like a menace to society, like not one-off things. It's like, what? And we also need to take into consideration, well, I'll just continue. I'll add that in later. Concerned that the criminal prescription of certain conduct is not in conformity with general principles of criminal law and international human rights law, either because the prescribed conduct should not be criminalized at all, since it involves the legitimate and lawful exercise and enjoyment of human rights, or because the content and scope of certain criminal offenses are otherwise inconsistent with general principles of criminal law. Further concerned that in such circumstances, criminalization violates or otherwise impairs the exercise and enjoyment of the full range of civil, cultural, economic, political, and social rights, especially of the rights to dignity, equality, non-discrimination, non-violating young children. That you better get that out of there. I'm not kidding around. You don't need to talk about anything adolescent. If it's under the age of 18, we're not talking about it. Mothers, say the mothers. Okay, you guys are not going to be able to creep your little creepy ways in, trying to write some document just because you're a man and try to throw in there the adolescent stuff. Bullshit. Any adolescent that says that they consent has been coerced into believing so, and we need to leave the children alone. And that says the mothers. Okay? You guys can have your creepy documents. You're going to take the adolescent stuff out of there. Anyway, carrying on. Says the mother. Okay? Freedom from violence, including torture or other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. Freedom of expression and association. Liberty and security of person. Life, privacy, and health. Like, for example, a mother. You don't take a child away from a mother. So this father's rights movement is rubbing us is going in the wrong direction. We're going to make changes about that as well. And I'm saying this with boldness and confidence because I'm going to vie for a world that is actually worth something, not this crappy piece of piecemealing nonsense that we're dealing with. Seriously. It's about time. Anyhow. Recognizing that people may experience discrimination in one or multiple intersecting grounds of discrimination prohibited by international human rights law, whether real or, like, for example, let me just point this out. No, this is point. Women have not been able to have children. Their babies have been taken from them, spread around the world. Women have been criminalized for having children. They were raped. They were taken advantage of. That doesn't matter. They were ruined in society for hundreds of years. You guys want to talk about who was a slave? All you people that want to claim your slave status, women are still slaves. Okay, free the freaking wives. We don't want to be an obedient wife to a man master. They can't even multitask. Anyhow, carrying on. Talking about mitochondria. Okie dokie. So where is it repeating itself some more? Whether real or imputed, such as age, sex characteristics, general. I mean, this is just we got it. You know, I mean, you're saying it all. You're saying it all, and they're going to throw this document out. I swear to God, no one's going to take this seriously. I couldn't even find this document until today. I knew that I was gonna feel this way about this. But anyhow, you can't do all this in one document like that. Do you realize what you're tackling here? All of those things at once? Oh no, they're now you've just asked for them to call it all insanity. I say get rid of these stakeholders. No, we need to do this all over again. We need to do this all over again. We need to get rid of the adolescent stuff. We need to get some reasoning and rationale going on here. Okay, stop shooting for the moon. We're going to need to try to get, like, you know, little wins. When we're coming up against these powerhouses, this is absolute madness right here. I mean, I'm just saying it. It's true. And or what we need to do is bring out 10 documents for each area of law. You know, you're talking family life. You're talking property rights, inheritance law, trust law. You're talking about, you know, and we need to tackle them all. Mental health. They're exploiting that. They're exploiting everything. And I say it's time that we call their cards. This is a great beginning, but I just think that this is not, I'm tired of reading it already. But about you know, they're going to say the same things, and it's going to keep going on and on about itself. So much more, and then some more, and then I mean, with no disrespect intended, if you want to read this read it for yourself. It's just more of the same stuff. More of the same stuff. It's more of the same stuff. God. Bada bada. Oh. Yup. Noting that at a minimum, consent sets the boundary between justifiable and unjustifiable state interference in certain conduct and contexts, and that ascertaining the presence or absence of consent is a matter of evidence and factual investigation with due regard to the strictures of the law and one's capacity to consent. Like, for example, my child's father intentionally inseminated me. It's called reproductive coercion. Does anybody take that seriously? Try to call the police on that one. My kid's been kidnapped over 6 years ago as we speak. Okay? This is a really nice document, but maybe you need to take this to the real world, hon. This is not, the cops don't even pay attention to anything they don't want to pay attention to, okay? They'd rather help you find your dog than they would help you with your child, all right? You guys need to be careful what you're trying to walk a fine line with children, because you're going to get schooled every single time from the mothers. Trust me, you guys are going down. Who's that? Mankind, who's been running the show all along and steamrolling over women the entire time. It's time's up. So just in case you wanted to know, all of those in the gray area, this isn't your time to shine. This is the time to get mothers back what they had been taken from them a long time ago. Mothers are the ones who need to be given back what was taken from them a long time ago, because it belongs actually to the children. The true covenant of God, the true love belongs to the children, not to honoring and bowing down before some husband, master, dude. Okay? Get with the program, people. Learn about some parthenogenesis. Read some information about what's gone on throughout history, culturally, worldwide. We need to get some truth up in genetic science, some truth up in all of our medical sciences, and we need to get less citizen scientists that are trying to profit off of patenting genetic nuances they caused by their harassment. Okay, this is what's going on. So this document is actually kind of trying to take us into lost in space. Okay, because I'm trying to tackle too many things and it's frustrating me. I don't like hearing anything about children being violated. And when you call people actors and you reference stakeholders like they actually have standing, well, you've just lost my respect. I don't know what you're talking about or what stands your positioning. Are you a court or are you a person? What? You know? So what is this talking about? Something practice of Article 38 of the Statute of International Court Justice, about elements of international law. Right. You're repeating yourself. Oh my God! And this is not even written like a contract. Oh God! Recommending that the principles be interpreted as a living document. Oh God. Mm-hmm. Okay, further recommending that judges, including magistrates, but you forgot to mention family court, dear. Problem. You shouldn't have just mentioned criminal law. You should have said trust law. You should have said property law. You should have said, inheritance law. We need to be talking about regulating the money markets. They're making us human capital, people. Let's talk about what's about ready to happen. That's another thing we need to know about. Hey, what type of classifications have been put against our names? They're calling parents domestic terrorists. Where are they calling them this? And who has access to that system? And as a matter of fact, what department do I submit my FOIA request to? Because there's like 150 of them. Okay, these are the things we need to be worried about. Yes. My goodness.